we are going to kick things off here with the first game, which has, let's say, some intrigue, I guess. We are going to be talking about the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. Seattle Seahawks find themselves on the road as very big underdogs. That being said, it is not quite as big as it was. 9.5 is the current number, though there is 110 out there at Caesars. 42 is our total in this one. So this reached 10 and went to 9.5, reached 10 again, went to 9.5, reached 10 again, and went to 9.5. So Adam, the market was telling us that 10 was too much for the Seattle Seahawks in this game. Now, we know what we're getting in this 49er squad. We are getting a massively aggressive defense. We are getting a very, very good defense with a ton of playmakers all over the place. The big story looming in this one is the weather. We have seen anybody in California, Las Vegas, the West Coast, we've gotten more rain over the last few days than we've gotten in months around here. That is supposed to manifest again in the Santa Clara area up there around Saturday. By the way, Saturday kickoff here for this. Now, Adam, varying reports. The worst of it should be before the game. Some of the reports say it's going to be kind of like during the game, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. How are you looking at that aspect? And then we can get into the full handicap of the game here.
What I find most interesting, Matt, is that this total really hasn't moved given all of those weather concerns. It was fairly low in the first place, and I think we can all understand that that reflects Seattle's offense against San Francisco's defense. I'm surprised that given that we're talking about, at very best, bad field conditions, that we're not looking at this having moved, but I think it's also a bit of a signal.
So that is what I was going to get to, is like, hey, look, even if the worst of the weather is before the game and it's not actually during the game, the real question will be, how does this field hold up, right? Because, I mean, if it is monsoon type, rain, which they're predicting just super, super, super heavy rain, even if it is before the game and it's not necessarily during the game, Stephen, that is something we should consider. I don't know the field condition. I mean, it's a new stadium. You would think that it has really awesome drainage and all the stuff like that. And, it's one of the newer stadiums out there. So I can only assume it's going to be able to handle weather situations better than some of the other ones, maybe the rest of the country. But again, I'm not familiar at all.
Well, it's also been raining cats and dogs there the entire week, right? It's not like it's, a lot of rain and then it drains and it's, good to go. They've been dealing with this the entire week. Adam shared in our Slack channel before the show that George Kittle tweeted that he hasn't had power for 4 days. So there's a lot of logistical stuff going on here with the 49ers. With the possible weather conditions and despite the huge mismatch here, I wouldn't lay this many points with the 49ers. I did bet them in a moneyline parlay right when these markets opened Sunday night. So another shameless plug for everybody to join the TheLines.com Discord channel, because we got a moneyline parlay with the Niners and the Bengals at minus 125. That's like minus 230 now. So with these playoff markets, you got to get them early sometimes, and great reason to be in the Discord. 5.3 to 4.6 yards per play in the first meeting between these two teams, despite the Niners switching quarterbacks. Week 15 with Brock Purdy, it was 6.2 to 4.5. That final score of 21-13 was very deceptive. The Niners were up 21-3 in the third quarter in that game. So this is a mismatch to me. I'm not going to lay the points with the 49ers, but I did bet the under when this was 43 because of the weather concerns. I also share your guys' surprise that it has only moved a point. Honestly, I bet that with the intention of trying to middle it, thinking this number was going to tank, and it hasn't yet. I still think there's time for it to tank if the weather forecast turns even gloomier. But I would never play the over in a weather condition game like this. And you factor in even in good weather, I'm not sure how the Seahawks score many points in this game. They didn't score an offensive touchdown in one of the two meetings between these two teams. So a lot of signs here point to like a Niners blowout to me of something like 20-3 or, very low scoring game. But weird things happen in rainy, windy games, and we can't be 100% sure that that's not what we're going to get here.
So, Adam, everyone's pointing to that freak loss, in week 1 for the 49ers and all that. I'm not. I don't care. I'm not looking at all of that. I am, though, looking at this and saying that no matter really what the weather is didn't change my handicap really all that much. The 49ers have not asked very much of Brock Purdy as it is anyway. He is not a guy that is going out and is going to sling the ball 40 plus times in the game. They have Elijah Mitchell healthy now as well. So they already had a deep running back room. It only got deeper with a guy that everybody had. I mean, he was on the kind of sleeper list for offensive player of the year and all the things like that. And of course he gets hurt and misses the majority of the season, but now he's back. He looked pretty good last week. Deebo Samuel's back. He's going to get, 3 or 4 carries over the course of a game. I just expected the 49ers to come out and just run the ball down the Seattle Seahawks throat. I did lay the 9.5 with the 49ers, and I don't feel bad about it at all. When we take a look at this Seattle defense, which kind of fooled us there in the middle of the season, where we're like, oh, okay, maybe they've changed a little bit. Maybe they've turned a corner. It was just a flash in the pan, probably just more opponent based than anything else, because they went right back to that horrible Seattle defense that we knew the first, 6 weeks of the season. And if I believe that the 49ers are going to be able to run successfully, and they are going to be able to just turn around and hand the ball off, no matter what the weather conditions might be, I'm going up against a Seattle run defense that since week 10 is 30th DVOA in the NFL versus the run. It is 32nd rush EPA allowed in the NFL since week 10. So again, a big hunk of the season, it has been the worst rush defense in the NFL. We know what we're getting out of the 49ers from a rush attack and Shanahan and his creativity and things like that. I don't really care. Rain, if it's rain, no rain, whatever, all that. I just thought they were going to run it down the Seahawks' throat anyway. So my handicap stays the same.
Well, I think at this point, you guys have covered side and total pretty well. So I'll talk about one other angle that I like into this game, and that is the aforementioned Eli Mitchell. Right now sitting 38.5 on his rushing prop. And let's think about the 49ers and how we expect this game script to play out, right? If everything that we're talking about here goes the way that we expect, and the 49ers are blowing out the Seahawks and just pounding it on the ground over and over again, not involving the chance of Brock Purdy in his first playoff start getting any sort of starry eyes and throwing interceptions and anything like that, it's not going to be Christian McCaffrey they're force-feeding the ball to on a bad field. They know the injury history as well as we do. And so it's not going to be him. Who's it going to be? Well, I think it's likely to be Eli Mitchell, and it's also likely to be a situation where even with the bad field conditions, as bad as Seattle's run defense is, it's only going to take 1 or 2 pops for Eli Mitchell to get to that 38.5. So I like that on the over rush yards.
Adam, just your thoughts on the side. Is 10 too much? Is 9.5? Because we've seen the resistance point, right? It's like every time it gets to 10, it goes back down to 9.5, but then it doesn't ever really get past 9.5. So it's kind of like we know where we're probably going to be come kickoff on Saturday.
I think it's a function of the weather more than anything else, and the fact that this total hasn't moved either, right? It's not like we're seeing this go up, and then we're also seeing total movement that would suggest to us that, that there's some belief that this is going to be a higher scoring game. I think the fact that we've seen that resistance point just says that it's Brock Purdy's first career playoff start. It's going to be bad field conditions that could lead to turnovers. And we have at points seen Seattle's offense be explosive. Now, those points haven't been recent, and they haven't been against the 49ers. So I have a hard time getting myself there. But I look at this game and see a Seattle team that if you watched a lot of that game last week against the Los Angeles Rams, I'm not sure I've seen a worse performance out of a team that had something on the line going into the playoffs than I have out of Seattle. And it has looked that way for the last 5 or 6 weeks. So I don't have a lot of hope for them. That said, I think that it's more about weather and more about Purdy's first start as a 7th round pick in the playoffs that is leading to that resistance point.
Yeah, Stephen, if we take a look, I mean, even if we think that they're going to have a tough time scoring the football, I mean, Ken Walker has really and truly just moved, which is it's weird for Pete Carroll, but he has moved to a bell cow back here, which he is, for the last several seasons, for whatever reason, was really wanting to split carries between 2 and 3 different guys. If we look to last week, Ken Walker played on 87% of the snaps and got over 90% of the team carries. Now, we can't predict that he's going to have success against the 49ers offense, but if we do think that it's not going to be through the air because of possible conditions, he's at least going to get the carries. And so it does make me wonder, if we look, do we just bet opportunity, not necessarily from a yardage standpoint for a guy like Ken Walker, who, by the way, his yardage total set about 60 yards, something like that, his rushing total, but just carries, right? Just carries in general. I can see them turn around and carrying, giving him the ball at least through the first 3 quarters until this thing maybe gets out of hand, 25, 26, 27 times, because again, I don't, Pete Carroll's old school. He's not going to put the ball in the air when there's wind and rain and things like that.
I am admittedly not the guy to ask about props, but I will say that one of our props writers over at TheLines.com is like in sync with you guys on these angles and game script situations. Jeffrey Schreiber, one of our props writers, he's already hit a $10,000 props parlay this year. He likes Kenneth Walker over his receiving yards. He bet it at 9.5. It's still available at 10.5 with what you mentioned, the volume and also potential negative game script here. So with the snaps that he's getting, I think that fits in. He agrees with Adam on the Eli Mitchell angle, but he's taken the anytime touchdown at plus 260. And I think a correlated play there is Christian McCaffrey under 40.5 receiving yards, considering hasn't been very often in recent weeks since Eli Mitchell has come back where CMC is getting that receiving yards volume that we saw in the middle of the year. So he's in line with all you guys on those prop angles. I'll just say when it comes to Brock Purdy, at this point, I'm not here for the Brock Purdy doubt. He's a placeholder. He is in there executing exactly what Kyle Shanahan does, and I have all the confidence in the world in that. I've seen enough at this point. Since taking over at quarterback, Brock Purdy is 4th in adjusted EPA. That's better than Josh Allen. He's 8th in quarterback success rate. That's better than Allen and Jalen Hurts. His expected completion percentage is 70%. That's better than Mahomes, Burrow, Hurts, and Josh Allen. Now, is that a quarterback stat? No. But he's actually completing 70% of his passes too. So he's executing a masterful scheme from Kyle Shanahan, whereas guys like Burrow and Allen and Hurts are having to overcome schemes and game plans that are not putting offenses in situations to complete passes at a top 10 rate in the league in this span since Purdy has taken over. So do you trust Purdy to continue this in the playoffs? The question then becomes, do you trust Kyle Shanahan to continue his masterful scheme in the playoffs? And I've seen enough to say yes at this point, no matter what quarterback is in there. And that included last postseason when he had an injured, compromised Jimmy Garoppolo that couldn't do nearly as much health-wise or athletically as Brock Purdy has shown us at this point.
Adam, I want to close things off here. Seattle team totals 15.5. So more than 2 touchdowns. 49ers defense since week 10, number 1 overall DVOA, number 1 EPA per play allowed, number 1 in success rate allowed. And we know that this Seattle offense has been much worse over the second half of the season than it was in the first half of the season. Now factor in any sort of weather concerns, different things like that. Is Seattle getting to 16 points?
I see where you're coming from. I think I still have a little bit of Raiders 34 points 2 weeks ago in my head, where it's a better offense, obviously, but put it this way. I'm not betting the over, right? The only way you get me involved is in the under, but I'd have to take a closer look at that before I fired on it.
Yeah, 16 points for Seattle. Another interesting angle. Again, one that's not in my account, but I will let you guys know I am going to dig into that one a little bit further because, again, super low total, really good defense, possible weather concerns.
The offense scored 0 points in the first game against the Niners and 3 points through 3 quarters in the second game against the Niners. And now they have weather. So can't argue with you guys.
Something to consider there. Again, that's sitting 15.5 right now in favor of Seattle. I mean, 15 team total points there for Seattle.